Hello and welcome. You're watching Tech 24. I'm Julia Seeger. From hacker to minister, in this edition we speak to Audrey Tang, Taiwan's digital minister, about how she helped carry out the Sunflower Occupy movement in her country. She tells us how she's now fighting to implement open government and social innovation policies. Plus, in Test 24, we'll take a look at two different gadgets that aim to increase your safety and security on the road and in the air. But first, you're probably holding one in your hand as we speak. After just over a decade in existence, the smartphone has conquered the world. This year, the number of users is expected to surpass 3 billion. But with markets saturated and new tech on the horizon, will the smartphone endure? Brian Quinn takes a look at the device that has changed our daily lives.
Once upon a time, Ina Salminen would have found her way through the forest with a topographical map and compass, recording data in a waterproof notebook. Now, the Finnish field engineer just uses her smartphone to navigate, to alert rescuers if necessary, but also to do the basics of her job.
It's a very important tool. I use it to collect all of my data out in the field.
The smartphone has become an indispensable part of the modern world, expected to be in the hands of 3 billion users by the end of the year. In some of the world's direst situations, the smartphone is there. In Idlib, Mohammed Hamrouch of the Syrian Civil Defense, known as the White Helmets, uses his phone to document where regime bombings are happening and to let his family know he's safe. In Beijing, 21-year-old live streamer Qiao Ji broadcasts her songs and musings to over 600,000 followers.
Smartphones have brought me closer to my fans. Even when I'm not streaming, we may be far apart, but we can still play games together on our phones.
And as violence and poverty spark refugee crises, the smartphone has become a crucial navigational and communication tool for migrants as they make their way across unknown lands in search of a better life.
We don't walk on roads, we go through the forest. And in the woods, if you don't have the Maps app, you don't know where you're going.
In just over a decade of existence, smartphones have changed the world while becoming the world's best-selling consumer device. But with most markets already saturated, sales have flattened. So what's next? Analysts are looking to super-fast 5G networks and leaps in augmented reality features to keep the smartphone market growing. Others predict a different future in which wearables or implants equipped with artificial intelligence become the next life-changing technology. But while the market may be pausing for now, the smartphone itself isn't going away anytime soon.
And like every week, our in-house expert, Dan J. Kattlecar, is here with us on set. Hello and welcome, Dan. This week we have a very special show because we are going to talk to Audrey Tang. She was among many young activists who occupied Taiwan's parliament in 2014 to protest against a trade deal secretly signed with China, a protest now known as the Sunflower Movement. In the aftermath, she was appointed Taiwan's digital minister, becoming the world's first transgender member of government. She's kept her anarchist principles, making her quite an unconventional politician, fighting for radical transparency and open government. Well, for more, let's cross over to Audrey in Taipei. It's an honor to have you here on the show.
Hello, I'm very happy to virtually be here.
You co-signed the Sustainable Democracy Initiative with the NGO Make.org. What are you trying to achieve here, and is there such a thing as sustainable democracy per se?
Yes, for sure. The T-shirt I'm wearing is the symbol of Sustainable Development Goals, and that's the global goals that the entire UN agreed on for the year 2030. And the key thing with democracy is that it's the only way moving forward to make sure that sustainable economy, sustainable society, and sustainable environment is not at odds or fighting with each other, but actually reinforcing each other's positions. And that's only possible through a democratic process.
And precisely, how can technology help?
The technologies are always in assistance to the democratic institutions. The most important thing, of course, is trust. If you have no trust from the government to the citizen, if the government don't trust its citizens, then of course the citizens won't trust the government. So through radical transparency, through open government, through all the different ways that we make sure that people understand the context the why of policy making, not just the what of the result of the policy. We ensure that everybody is included in the discussion, and that makes it possible for democracy to truly work.
Now, your motto is full transparency. What do you say to those who think that transparency can be a form of dictatorship in itself?
So my answer is that transparency is good to a degree. For example, for all the meetings that I chair internally, even with Career Public Service, we publish the full transcript to the internet after 2 weeks. But during those 2 weeks, it allows everybody to go back and review each other's positions. Sometimes people just tell me, oh, Minister, after reviewing, we, for the first time, actually understood what the other side has to say, and we don't need another meeting anymore. So that's the positive. But also, it enables people to edit for professionalism so that people can see the professional side of a public service, and the part that are in jokes or things like that, which is not relevant to the discussion anyway, are edited out. So it's a transparency, it's radical transparency, but it's within the humanity and within the tolerance of the public service.
And now, before being appointed digital minister of the Taiwanese government, you fought alongside Taiwanese students in the 2014 Sunflower Occupy movement. Can revolutions happen in the 21st century without the internet and social media networks? How can they help drive the change?
Yes, so the revolution during the Sunflower movement, I always refer it to a demonstration. But the demonstration is not in the sense of a protest. It is in the sense of a demo. A demo is a showcase of how actually to talk about the same thing with 500,000 people on the street and many more online, and still get more consensus every day, instead of like many other Occupy where people just diverge into nowhere. In the Sunflower Occupy, after 3 weeks, we actually converge on a set of 5 points of consensus that then the head of the parliament actually agreed and be bound to. And so the idea of the demonstration is not about overthrowing the old system. It's demonstrating a new system that essentially renders the old system obsolete in certain circumstances.
And even as a government official, you're sticking to your hacktivist principles. Would you say it's sometimes incompatible? How can elected officials or member of government stick to their word?
Right. So basically, I'm at a Lagrange point, which is a midpoint between the civil society and the movements on one side and the government on the other side. So I'm not partial to any side. I'm more like a channel that amplifies and make possible to understand the why, the context of policymaking on one side, but also social justice and social activism on the other side. Because from the government's perspective, it's not always clear what are the feelings, what are the sentiments that provoke the people to go to the streets, for example. If we can listen to people well before they take to the streets, then it makes it much more easy for people to actually agree on each other's feelings. And once we listen deeply to each other's feelings, we find common values despite different positions. And given the common values, just like the Sustainable Development Goals, then we can be bound by our words in response to those shared values and not to any particular ideology or any particular sentiment.
Audrey Tang, Taiwan's digital minister, thank you so much for speaking to us here on Tech 24.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And it's time to turn to Dan and Jay Cattle Car. Dan, hackers usually yearn to change the world, yet they don't often enter politics, just like Audrey did. Why is the relationship between hackers and politicians so complicated?
Well, Julia, as we all well know, politics for most of the time is about individualism and power. But if you look at the guiding principles or the basic tenets of hacker ethics, as proposed by the author Stephen Levy in his 1984 book Hackers, you will find that there is decentralization, there is openness, there is sharing, and then you add a few more terms like open source and horizontal power hierarchy, and the answer is obvious that these two are, it's difficult for them to be compatible.
That's right. Governments are not yet prepared to welcome hackers. But what will they be fighting for in the future, these hackers?
Well, Julia, as artificial intelligence envelops our lives, I think the big focus will be to fight against AI bias. And by that, I mean to ensure that there is more transparency in the artificial intelligence algorithms so that it becomes more accountable. Secondly, there will also be a need for decentralization of artificial intelligence so that it's not concentrated with a few corporations. And third, which is also very important, is to ensure that the benefits of artificial intelligence reach out to a large section of the population.
Thank you, Dan. We're going to move on to Test 24. This week, we're taking a closer look at two gadgets that are very different indeed, but all are trying to increase citizens' safety and security, both on the ground and in the air. Let's start with Liberty Riders to increase road safety for bikers, and they're doing so thanks to a smart glove.
That's right. The Toulouse-based startup Liberty Rider has teamed up with another French startup Racer to develop this glove. Now, this glove alerts if there's any danger on the road ahead. So if there's a group of riders riding along a route and the rider at the front sees anything wrong, then he can alert the other riders by just pushing this button.
Right.
And you feel the vibration near the wrist, and that's how the other riders will take evasive action. They will slow down or they'll stop completely. Now, Liberty Rider has also developed an application that helps detect accidents for motorcycle riders and scooter riders. So this application is embedded with a proprietary algorithm, and using this algorithm and the accelerometer on the smartphone, the app is able to detect if there has been a fall. And if it senses that there's something wrong, then it first of all sends a message to the rider. And if there's no response, then it again calls the rider and asks for the rider's exact position. And then it calls the medical services. Now, statistics have shown that if medical care is provided to accident victims within 1 hour, then their chances of survival increase by almost 80%. So that's a huge number, and that's why this application is very useful.
And now, before taking off, commercial planes must be inspected. That takes time. Time is money. So the French startup Doneclis has developed an automatic inspection system.
Yes, this system helps to inspect aircrafts quickly and with greater reliability. That's because they come equipped with a LiDAR system. This drone, 80 centimeter by 80 centimeter drone, is equipped with a LiDAR system that helps it to navigate along the aircraft. It is also equipped with a 12 megapixel HD camera that helps to take great pictures, good quality pictures. And it also has a digital model of the aircraft integrated into it. So as it moves along the aircraft and takes pictures, it can compare these pictures with the digital model and determine if there's any fault on the surface of the aircraft.
Thank you so much, Dan. That brings us to the end of this week's edition of Tech 24. See you next time.